As we don't have a crowded agenda, we will start in about 10 minutes so everybody can eat some lunch who is supposed to have lunch. If you steal something, I won't tell anybody.
This room's run by Raspberry Pis.
So, hello everybody, let's start. As I said, we don't have a very crowded agenda, but we have a few topics, and let's try to get through it. So we have this first part of the agenda, which is more our administrative part. Cindy, do you want to take that? Yeah, and then like the second part, we will hand over to the RPC basically, and running through a couple of discussions. Yeah.
Should we go around the table, or should we at least let Alexa say hi?
That's on the agenda.
So I didn't know that we had an entire slide just with introductions, and that was a very detailed agenda. I sort of looked at number one, and I figured the rest was actually other stuff. But wow.
So for attendance, all of the RSAB members are present. We do have a couple of people who are observing remotely from Meetico, so please do use the microphones. And we've got observers in the room as well. Does anyone have any changes to today's agenda? Anything to add? Okay, that sounds like no. Then I think the next thing on the agenda was the intro and the welcome for Alexis.
I'm pretty sure I've met all of you already, but my name's Alexis Rossi, and I started about 2 months ago. I feel like I'm still trying to learn all of the vocabulary. I thought I had it before this meeting, I'm not going to lie. And then I came to the meetings here in London, realized I still don't know all the vocabulary. So anyway, right now what I'm mainly working on is the rfceditor.org revamp with Torchbox. If you have any input you'd like to give me on that, I would love to hear it. I've been working on making sure that all of our archiving partners have full copies of the RFCs, and starting to work on getting our outlinks from RFCs and things like that actually archived, so that we have completeness in our archive of stuff. So those are kinds of my things at the moment, and please feel free to come say hi to me if we haven't met already.
Yeah, welcome, and great to have you here.
Yeah. Okay, then the next thing we had on the agenda is a tooling update from Robert Sparks, who is joining us.
We have RSAB related and editorial stream related work that needs to be done in XML RSC and data tracker. These are queued for probably December, beginning of January. We're not expecting anything's going to try to come through the stream before then. Don't see any difficulties, anything that's likely to become a blocking point. It's just a matter of slotting in the work.
So for RSAB, that's basically the balloting abilities, or like, is there anything else? Okay, yeah, that's not urgent, I guess.
I think that balloting is the only thing that's left for the RSAB group proper.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, even if we did need to ballot, we can do it by email for a little while. But I don't see anything on the horizon either. So I think we have time.
As I said, we don't have a lot of stuff on the agenda. We don't have any documents, which is our main purpose. So that was the first part of the agenda, and I'm basically just handing over to the RPC now.
Okay, so actually this first one is, I don't think we own it, so I probably put it in the wrong place. I think Lars raised the issue about rswg.org, and if there's anything that the working group wants to do with it.
I just registered it. rsap.org was taken, but that one wasn't. And so I have it, and I might have even assigned it over to Echo. I don't know. I can't remember. But sort of if it's there for somebody to do something with it, we have it. Right. And we probably, I don't know who should own it, if it's the trust or whatever, but it's available.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, I think I'll talk to Pete, but I think probably we'll do an HTTP working group that already did and expand out the site that is just boring, but is where you go. So I'll talk to Pete, but I think that's the plan. Thanks.
Okay, so the next one was for the headers and boilerplate, and it was just to check whether there were any objections to the proposed path forward. And it was namely, the RPC would be in charge of headers and boilerplate material and moving the page that the IAB has on their website to the RFC editor website. Wondering if there's any objections to that.
So remind me what you mean by in charge of, or I think that's the word you use, right? So the sort of basically maintains the site or is responsible for the content? Because I think the streams can decide their own boilerplate, right? But it's basically you would host the content, and basically the streams or the RSAB or the RSWG would instruct changes to be made.
Correct. We would just maintain the outcome of what the streams say.
That seems fine to me. We should probably have a little bit of a description about how changes technically get proposed and get approved, right? Because I think some of the boilerplate is shared across all the streams, and that would be an RSWG, RSAB thing. And some of the boilerplate is per stream, and that would be under the stream approving bodies control, I think is the terminology, right? Okay.
So the IESG and the IRSG.
Yes, so the IETF could change their part of the boilerplate, but not the shared part. The shared part would need to have agreement across the streams, yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So is that something you think that should go with that information?
So this might already be in the RFCs that create the streams, right? And I don't know, but if it does, it might just be worthwhile putting that maybe in a little box and point to those documents. If we find that this, what I just outlined, doesn't really exist in the written down form, and specifically, I don't think this shared part is under the control of the RSWG, RSAB process. I don't think that's part of the Model 3 document, if I remember correctly, so that we might want to make that so, right? Because that's the only logical option.
So Lars, this is Elliot. Section 3.2.6 of RFC 9280 covers boilerplates and the process for updating them. I'm not quite sure what you're proposing that would be either in line or differ from that, but I think what happens within the streams is up to the streams to decide in terms of their own approval process, I gather. And then it goes to then the RSAB has to approve something, and then there's the RPC that has a role, and then the IETF has
Excellent.
IETF
So if we said, I couldn't recall that we said that. If we say that, so I don't want to propose anything more or different than what's in the document. I wasn't remembering that we had put that in the document. So then we just basically point to that section of 9280, and we're done.
Yeah.
From the website.
It's already on the website. So the purpose of this website is only to have one place where you can easily find the information, what are the current boilerplates for each stream. So the webpage is ready and up.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The webpage is ready. It's up and ready and linked already, or
It's not linked to.
okay?
No.
Okay. So
It's just
because
draft
like
form.
the IAB page is still up, so we can
Uh-huh.
take that down as soon as you're ready, I think.
Okay. I'll coordinate with Cindy and you
Yeah,
after
yeah.
this then.
Yes.
The next one was just a reminder that we created the RPAT. I didn't see any major objections. So I don't think there's much to discuss unless any of you wanted to say anything. I don't think I heard from everyone, so I just wanted to make sure. Okay, I just wanted to make sure there were no major concerns with what we've done.
No concern. I'm just like the description you have of the proof is very like general and vague, and we had like a little bit of a discussion about this. So I think what we really need to figure out is to find the right boundary, like where to discuss what, and that probably just need experience. So if you just keep us up to date, also about how your experience, like where the split is and how it should work and how it works for you, I think that's important.
Okay, right. We're trying to do the right thing. So our goal is hopefully to have, also to get input from RPAT about what needs wider discussion and what doesn't, and keep you apprised of what's happening. And also the list archives are open, right? So anyone can see what's happening there and provide input that, they think it needs to be discussed elsewhere.
So I think that one bad outcome would be if like we end up discussing all topics in two places and have like just like a huge amount of people, more people involved than needed, and like having big discussions about all kind of little things. That would be the worst outcome. So that's what we should avoid. Yeah.
So the list is open as far as archives, but people can't actually, who are not members of the list, cannot discuss it there. And actually that was a discussion point we had with Jay and within that team, which was we don't want it to be another discussion area for the whole community, right? If it's going to be a public discussion, it should happen in a public forum.
So, but like what I kind of saw last time already is that you had like a topic that you discussed in the RPAT, and then you brought it to the RSAB, and then like all the people from RPAT were still involved in the discussion, and then it came to RSAB, and then maybe RSAB decides to bring it to RSWG, and then like, you just like get more and more people in maybe a small discussion involved. So like, I think that's something to watch out for.
Okay, I think that's part of the learning curve for us, right?
Yeah,
Totally,
so the way I sort of see this, right? Sorry, I didn't want to. So I mean, the RPAT is something that's internal to the RPC, right? And so the RSAB and the RSWG shouldn't really ever hear from the RPAT because they talk to you and then you talk to like us, right? And if you create this team internally, that's your call and totally fine, and then you use them for what you want to use them for, but it doesn't change the structure at all, right? And I think if you think about it that way, right, then there's a pretty clear line, and we wouldn't have the same people in the discussions really.
Now, just to say this again, this is a learning experience. So like we have to figure out how to get this right and how this works best for you. That's the purpose.
So the next one was about the use of you. It's a pretty detailed XML item, and some of you have already heard this, but I wanted to share it with all of the stream managers because it'll impact all of you. Sorry. So in earlier times, non-ASCII characters could not be included in the RFCs unless, or within running paragraph text, unless the U notation, the U element was used. And that was found to be an error. 7997 does not require the use of U. And so XML to RFC has been updated to allow non-ASCII characters to appear within TU. But we added some text to the style guide that specifies if those characters are required, like understanding those characters is required for protocol operation, then they should be spelled out, right? So U notation should be included. And we are hoping that the stream managers will help look at that as you're reviewing the documents, right? Like, is it required for proper protocol operation? Should the U element be included in the document?
Yeah, we're rehashing the Sunday discussion a little bit. So we probably, the meta item for us is to not make sure that we duplicate Sunday items with this group. But so you can ask the stream managers, right? But for the ISG, right, we don't review the XML. And so people look at the HTML or the text rendering typically, and they might spot a Unicode character that doesn't have the parentheses uppercase expansion in it, and they might flag it. But since we're not looking at the XML, I guarantee you will not find things. And I also guarantee you it won't be a priority for ADs when they do reviews. So it's really you guys that need to be, because you're really the only ones other than the authors, and even most authors don't look at the XML anymore. It's really you guys that need to look at that.
Would it help if we had something like if we asked ID nits to be updated to highlight like where those characters appear?
I don't know is the answer, because so I'm author of a draft that heavily uses Greek letters for math. And if you highlight all of them, it's going to be very, very noisy. And Robert has his hand up. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, when we looked at this on the mailing list, I think there were at least two outcomes. There were two issues, right? The first issue is what to do with the instant draft. And the second issue was what to do going forward. And without addressing the former, let's address the latter for the moment, which is that's a topic for the RSWG to take up. Sorry, I was going to say, without addressing the former, what to do about the instant draft. I think that one's settled already at this point.
You got to get even closer because I still can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Okay. Sorry, I've never been accused of being too soft-spoken before. What I was going to say is I think the instant issue has already been addressed in terms of that RFC. The latter issue then, I think, was a matter, I think John Levine had suggested that there needs to be a lot more guidance on the use of Unicode in drafts, and that's an issue for the RSWG to pick up. And I think it'd be a good idea if somebody wrote a draft on that for the RSWG.
I just want to reinforce that the tooling had been in the way. It basically deferred the problem by not letting things into the draft archive, into the repository. And that has now changed. So for weeks at this point, people could be introducing into internet drafts non-ASCII UTF-8 and arbitrary parts of the prose. So these are going to eventually bubble into publication request in one stream or another. So it's something that if RSWAG is where we build out the recommendations for what is reasonable, fine, but it really needs to be prioritized. It's going to be an issue sooner rather than later.
So work item for the RSWG to potentially write a guidelines document or amend the current guidelines for encouraged use of Unicode in IDs and RFCs.
So I guess, can someone help me with the timeline here? When was this change made to XML RFC?
The change wasn't made to an RFC. The change was made to XML to RFC.
That's what I was asking.
Okay. On the order of a month ago. So there was a long discussion where there was a realization that what the RFCs that defined what we were supposed to do said and what XML to RFC did. So one of these places where there was a significant overreach on what XML to RFC limited. Primarily because of a request that Heather put in at the time to control whether or not we had non-ASCII UTF-8 in general prose. But 7991 and family did not have that restriction. And in fact, it explicitly called out, it was the intent of those documents to allow non-ASCII UTF-8 in running text.
So I think we have a bit of a process problem here, which is we have a situation where we have an RFC which specifies what the tools are supposed to do. And then we've had a bunch of freelancing where people went and made ad hoc changes so that the tools do not conform to that document. And just tomorrow we'll be discussing how to document those ad hoc changes. But the documents are supposed to specify the thing as it currently is, and if they keep changing under us, then it's not going to work. So it has to happen here so that changes have to stop.
So it's not the document that changed, it's the tool.
I understand, but the document, the as-is document that John produced, what does it say?
Nothing.
Okay, so this is like not going to work. You can't do this.
But like the tools will not still and wait for the RSWG.
No, they do, they have to. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, that's something to discuss tomorrow.
So the issue here, Eric, is that there was a draft stalled on this point. And so the question came to us by way of the RPC saying, here's the draft. The RFC says this, but XML to RFC is doing that. What do we do?
Right, I understand, but like, that is a situation every day, because the tool is not conformed to 7981. And so the tool is full of things that don't conform to 7981. And so we made a decision to allow people to publish under the circumstances, but it cannot be the case that the tools continue to evolve without the supervision of the RSWG. That's the point. That's the whole point of the exercise.
Okay, so I just want to make clear one aspect. So what would you have had the RSAB say here differently than what we said? Because I just want to understand. If we made if you think we made an error, I'd like to understand what the error was.
So the way 9280 specifies this, if there are situations where they require policy decisions on short notice, the RSAB is authorized to make those decisions and then bring them to RSWG.
That's what we're discussing right now. What to do next, right? Because
Well, that should have happened immediately.
And we didn't really make a decision. We were interpreting the existing RFCs and giving advice based on what's written down by community consensus. So let's have this discussion offline. Let's try to wrap up this point for us here in RSAB now.
Just before we walk away from it, to help perhaps keep the conversation that we're going to have in RSWG focused. There is policy about what the streams allow, and there is what tools enforce. And the idea that you're having this intense negative reaction that the tools changed bothers me, particularly when what we did was we made the tools closer to what the current document said to do.
Okay, well.
Again, let's please take this offline, because I think this is actually the wrong place to have this detailed discussion.
Okay, but there is one thing, Miriam,
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm trying to figure out the process here.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say.
Well, why isn't it the right place to have the conversation if we're talking about whether this goes to RSWG or not? I'm not sure.
No, this is the discussion I want to have, but I want to have the discussion about taking it to the RSWG, and if that's the right process here, and not the discussion that we will have in the RSWG.
Right, okay, I understand, sorry.
Yes, so that's what I'm trying to do
Right.
here. So first of all, you had another point, right? You were trying to reply to something? No, okay. I've summarized, like, we had this issue, we changed something in the tools to make it align with the current RFCs. Was that announced to the RSWG? I think so,
Can we
right?
put a pin in this for 1 second? Because I want to go back to Sandy real quick, because she asked the stream approving bodies to review the use of U in cases where the Unicode is important to the operation of a protocol. And I want to make sure that you heard that. I don't think that review realistically will happen because we don't look at the XML, right? And so we can try, and we can task maybe the RSWG with talking about the non-U use of Unicode. But for the U part, right, it's really the detailed editing that you guys are doing that will catch those for us, hopefully. Sorry, unpinned.
Actually, yeah, let's wrap up this point first. Like,
So to that, our hope is to raise it for your awareness. And I hope that the stream managers and those reviewers will keep it in mind when they're looking at the documents. But I do view the RPC as the backstop. So if things go by unnoticed, we will be asking questions. So that's something you should also be aware of, right? We'll be asking for advice if something seems more than an example.
so you made the proposal to add this to ID NITs. Would that be helpful for the RPC at least?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think adding it to ID NITs would be great, right? Because it would at least cause the authors to look at it.
Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. And then, like, I would think the process is closer to what you just said. Like, you should have an eye on this, and if there is uncertainty from your side, then you can come back to the stream manager and figure out what the right thing to do. Does that make sense?
I mean,
Yeah.
It's going to be very noisy, right? Because the only thing you can do is for every UTF-8 code point in a document, you're going to, did you mean to put this in a U or not? That's the
So,
question.
but I mean, like taking this current example, it was part of a heading, right? It was part of like a subheading of a section or whatever, the Unicode character.
Right, but I'm thinking
And
about
like, that's a
cubic.
very clear case where it's not part of the protocol description. So I think that's something that you don't have to confirm.
But
with the
how
stream
does the
manager.
tool know it's not part of the protocol?
No, the tool can just flag everything. The tool can
Well,
flag
this is,
everything, right?
so implementation detail, not IDNets. Another tool that shows you these things that is made available to authors in the same place in the workflow that IDNets exists, but let's not do this in IDNets itself.
But you could put an IDNet, you could put like a line, you are using Unicode in like these 3 places, please double check.
I'm using hundreds of Greek letters. I don't want to see hundreds of warnings.
No, it should be one warning.
So you want to warns for each Unicode code point used.
No, like probably it's enough to say like you use a Unicode code point somewhere in the text, please double check it's not part of the
I
protocol.
think what I'm hearing is a requirement that the tooling be able to tell the authors that there's something to pay attention to here, and we can go figure out what to do in the tooling.
Yep.
Also, just Lars, you were talking about math. I'm guessing that a lot of the math is in artwork or source code, and the,
You would guess wrong.
no, oh, it's in flowing
No,
text.
because so there's math, right? But the text then uses the same variables as the artwork because it talks about what the variables mean. And that's where the alpha letters enter the,
Got it, okay.
So, but this is also, this is a, oh no, that's a BC, no, it's a proposed standard now?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
if we get it through, but yes, it will be a proposed then.
But it's a special case, I'd say.
It is a special case, but this is sort of where we want to get to, right? Because we want to be able to have the best possible way for authors to describe the content. And that might mean a lot of Unicode for some documents, right?
I mean, it's something that doesn't give me heartburns right now. It might change in like a couple of years.
Okay, so my takeaway is that we can discuss what the requirements are for, if we're gonna add a tool.
It does sound as if the focus here should be on the readability of the document and the interpretability of the document, not a specific set of rules about what is displayed when and what isn't, and those things. And that then comes back to the authors and comes back to the ADs and others and ISE and others to check that readability. In the same way that it can be affected by ordinary Latin characters or ordinary Latin words can have the same issues. So I think if that's the focus, then the tooling can then support that in many ways rather than us, getting stuck on the specifics of having to use a U in every certain circumstance and that sort of thing.
But this is the discussion we need to have in the RSWG, right? We need to figure out how to handle these things correctly in future. And that's not where we are right now. Like for now, we just have to figure out what the process is for now.
But sorry, I thought we were talking about a separate issue of authors being able to understand not the relation. I'm confused.
Sorry, say it again.
Sorry, I thought we were talking about how authors are going to work in relation with the RPC, and the ADs and others are going to be able to check documents that have Unicode in it. That I don't see the relationship between that and how that means we work with the RSWG.
Yes, so maybe I misunderstood your comment. What was your comment?
Right, so there's two separate issues, right? One is the very specific issue of giving authors guidance of when they should use the U tag, which expands to this, Unicode in then parentheses what the long name of that code point is. And the text currently says, when it's important for the operation of the protocol, you should use the U.
Yes.
And then he's asking, can the stream approving bodies review that U is being used consistently like that? And I said it's going to be difficult, right? The other issue is what guidance should authors have for using Unicode in general within a U tag?
I think that's a question for the RSWG. That's a question.
That's the RSWG.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so your question is all.
Any discussion on Unicode always goes to.
The other question is about the process. So just to understand where we are.
Paul is holding his hand up and I think he's authored documents in this space, so maybe you want to let him speak. You want to go to the mic, Paul?
So I'm really going to try to do this as questions, not comments. Is there an expectation that the rules are going to be different between the streams?
No,
Bring this question to the RSWG.
Oh, I figured that that question was explicitly for here, where the streams are different.
Currently not, because we're just trying to interpret what's written in the RFC currently, and that is very little guidance, and we will treat it the same for all streams.
Right. And then, okay, this will be a comment, not a question, but the RFC doesn't say anything about this. This is all in the as-is draft, which still has not been finalized. And so my question is, are you okay with doing something in whichever RFC to be is using a rule that may end up getting taken out of the as-is? That is, it's as-is as of today, but it hasn't actually been instantiated. And as we've seen, there's a lot of question of whether we want to do this or not or whatever.
So what's the alternative? Holding the RFC?
No, the alternative is to not use you. That is, you might disappear. But there hasn't been an agreement in the community that you is a good idea. You is part of as could be implemented. So that's my question is are you okay with using you even though it might not actually be implemented anywhere else?
But that's where we are right now. We have RFCs published that use you.
I thought we didn't have any already with you. I thought this was 2B. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, totally wrong. Never mind. Ignore that question.
Two answers. One, I think we're operating sort of on the general principle, and we should probably spell it out that, we want to try to minimize differences between streams. Because it would be very confusing if we did the opposite, right? And so I think that's sort of the general principle, right? And so, and I don't see this particular topic, I can't see a reason why this would differ between the streams, right? And then the second thing, I think we're, if the community consensus around what the tags are and how to use changes, we will follow along, right? But at the moment, we're sort of trying to follow whatever we have.
And the reason I was asking about the streams is the current wording in the as-is document says, in order to insert characters in context that don't explicitly allow Unicode. And that could be different between streams. Some streams, for example, could say, that's going to be too confusing, just let it everywhere. And other streams would say, we want to call it out. So I'm glad to hear that that may not happen.
I would expect the streams to try to stay aligned in the way the RFCs are developed.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, Paul, I don't believe that the streams would have the ability to override the RFC. And
but the RFC says in context and doesn't describe all the context. So I could believe different streams could have a different feeling about different contexts.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just to an aside, as far as I know, and I think possibly as far as you and John know, this is the only example of where the as-is contradicted or contradicts an RFC.
There are lots of them.
There are lots of them.
And some of them are listed at the beginning.
Yeah, RFCs, right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, it got trod all over.
Right, okay. Thanks.
Are we good on 3 or 4?
No.
No? Okay. Sorry for being optimistic.
Sorry. We have to get back to the process question. So checking where we are. So we gave advice to the RPC. The tooling was updated in line with the existing RFC. Was the tooling changed, announced to the RSWG as well? Or where was it? No.
Explicitly to the RSWG list or not. I know it went to all the stream managers.
Okay.
So I know the implication went to the IEST multiple times.
Okay, but there is a policy issue, so somebody should bring it to the RSWG.
We should at least sort of forward it to the RSWG list.
When we make a decision, it should be sent to the RSWG.
Yeah, I mean, actually.
Yes.
What?
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
It's the decision made by RSAB that needs to be communicated to the RSWG. It's not the tooling change that needs to be
Yeah, so
communicated.
I'm just asking what happened so far. I just want to understand where we are. Yes, so that's also what I wanted to say. I don't think it's good to have these tooling announcements without any context. So we should actually raise an issue. And actually, my understanding from the process would be it would be the RPC raising this issue with, like we would advise the RPC to raise the issue with the RSWG.
I can check the document if you want, but I think just when we make decisions for transparency's sake, and just so that, principal least surprise, we should inform the RSWG of our decision process. But that's Elliot's opinion. I can go look at the draft and see what it says, or the RFC and see what it says.
Do you remember which section? I'm trying to find it now. Yeah, me neither.
But so somebody's getting an action item to forward the decision announcement to the RSWG? Because I want to use the words raise the issue, and I don't think that's accurate, right? Because raise the issue sounds like we are invading discussion on this, which we don't, right?
No, I think what we should describe is we should not only say that there was a tooling update based on a decision that the RSAB made, but we should also say that there's a policy question that needs to be addressed and what this policy question is. I think that would be more useful.
Okay, so what is the policy question?
Policy question is how to handle how to give better advice to authors, like what's the actual way to handle the Unicode and using the Unicode.
Okay, so basically related to the RFC2B. Yes.
Yes, and I guess we can figure out the question who forwards what to whom, but can you maybe propose some text, like just a very quick description about what we did and what the policy problem is to the mailing list, and
here's
we
what the
can make
problem.
sure.
Here's what the problem was. Here's what was done. Decision that was done. Here's the tooling change that happened.
And then we can figure out who exactly sends it where. I don't think that's a big problem. Okay. Does it make sense to everybody? Okay, then we can move on.
Make it so.
The next one was just,
Excuse me, I caught the text actually in 9280. All right, here's what it says. If there's a it's couched in the term disagreement, but it says, in this case, the RSAB is responsible for A, resolving the disagreement in a timely manner if necessary so that the relevant stream documents can be published before a new policy is defined, and B, bringing the issue to the RSWG so that a new policy can be defined. That's in section 4.4. So in answer to Ecker, I think the RSAB should collectively say, "Are bad." We should have done that.
I don't think so. Like, we are here to actually make this decision, to document this decision, and then reach out afterwards. We would do that.
I don't think a month is timely. If you made a decision a month ago and you're telling us now, and you haven't even told us yet, that's not timely.
No, but the decision is taken, right? We don't inform you before that decision because we're resolving the conflict.
I think we could have been more. We could have been faster with informing the RSWG. I think that's the
Yes,
point.
but I
we
don't
should
think-
do so going forward.
But so we are informing them after the decision was taken, and I don't think in this case it makes any difference when we exactly inform them. We could have been faster, but it doesn't make a difference.
Well,
It certainly certainly does. So, like, what stopped this RFC being published in this time period, right? Like, the decision was made when you instructed the tools team to make the change. That's when the decision was made.
Because there was an RFC in the queue that was waiting for this change.
Right, and so what I'm saying is what you need
at the same time, we could have already informed the
We
RSWG.
could, but like, what's the
And
difference?
we should have.
because that's what
the
timely
text
needs.
says. Yes. So growing pains of a new structure, and we'll strive to do better in the future.
I think the reason I'm being pointed about this is because the RSCB has extremely narrow operating parameters, which are designed to do exactly two things: to approve the output of the RSWG and to, in cases like this, to make changes and alert the RSWG. They're not an independent body which makes policy about this.
No, and we don't.
And so part of those narrow parameters are notifying the RSWG in a timely fashion when you make those decisions.
Yes, I think we just have a different interpretation of timely, because this is like a matter of a few weeks, right? And we're organizing this meeting, so we have this meeting to actually document in our minutes that we discussed this issue, and this is the right time to reach out to the RSWG. And like, I don't really understand your point, because like informing you like 3 weeks earlier wouldn't really change anything, right? Because the RSWG is also not operating on a like daily basis.
It's not only about whether it would have changed something. It's also about what impression does it set, or what does it give, right? Because one of the concerns that led to the creation of the structure was that the RSOC was very intransparent and did stuff, and the community wasn't involved. And the community decided on a process where, as Ekra said, right, the RSWG is the debating body, and we are the approval body, and we have a little bit of mandate to do things because otherwise the queue stops. And this was a case where the queue would have stopped for this document, and so we did a decision. But the I think implied immediate ask at the same time is to take it to the RSWG. And
immediate is not the same as timely, Robert.
So
Go ahead,
please. It seems like there's just some disagreement or confusion about what timely means here. And I think what we probably need to do at this point is write down what our expectations are and get agreement on them, so we understand what timely actually means in this case, and whether that's within a day, whether that's within a month or a week, or whatever it is.
I think just we can take the request that, the reaction that we're seeing here is that over communication is likely to hurt less than under communication. So
absolutely yes, but I think it's also wrong expectation. We're not in this group, and also not in the RSWG. We're working on any kind of daily business. I mean, like, this was blocking something in a queue, right? So we made a decision, but anything that follows is a much longer timeline. So I don't see what the urgency is, and I would much rather have these things put up on a meeting agenda and put them in the meeting minutes and have them documented right correctly, and then reach out, rather than doing something on a haste without need.
I think the difficulty is, though, that the tools implementation took place some weeks ago. So we have the decision made, tools implementation, and then a significant time before the RSWG is told. That's the issue. If we'd made a decision and nothing had happened with it, I can understand then,
But the only reason why we made a timely decision is because something had to happen about it, right?
Yes, absolutely, yes. And so that, I think them saying we have now made a decision that affects the tools implementation and this will be done at so-and-so time is something that needs to be passed on to RSWG. Timely to me means that they know that the tools implementation is coming or has just happened.
But you're saying if we should have informed them before the tools change happened, this gives them a chance to intervene, or what's your expectation? No, because that was absolutely wrong.
gives them a chance to start thinking about what the policy would be.
But why is it important that it happens quickly? Because the policy implication will not be decided tomorrow.
Because we've had a situation where the RSOC was doing things and it wasn't transparent, and the community didn't like that, and there might be fear that the RSAB is moving in the same direction, and we need to offset that.
But the transparency
If you take decision and not tell the community for a while, right? It's a pattern that the RSOC used to have. They're delayed for much longer, and sometimes never told, right? But it's the community expects transparency and expects it in a timely manner. And in this case, I think, reasonably so, we didn't deliver because we took too long to let them know. Even if they wouldn't have started work until this meeting or next meeting, it's about when did the information get passed out of the RSAB.
I mean, I don't think it matters what the RSWG would do with this knowledge. Is that we have committed to release it, so we should do so in a timely manner. We should agree what timely means.
Can I just suggest perhaps that we just have a little bit of formalism around what a published decision is, because then that formalism, that published thing, is what goes to the tools team, what goes to RSWG, what goes to the RPC, and then everybody then gets it at the same time and then implements at the same time. So there's transparency that way. Because what it could feel like to some people is that we made a published decision, we sent it to the RPC and sent it to the tools team, and deliberately didn't send it to RSWG, which isn't the case, obviously, we all forgot, but it could look like that. So that's why, I'm just suggesting a bit more formalism.
Yeah, but this is a problem that we don't have this formality about the decisions, and I was hoping we actually use the meeting and having it on the meeting agenda and then putting meeting minutes in to have like this formal decision recorded.
Right. I mean, I would argue that we could say that this meeting is the point where we make the decision. If we're going to make decisions between meetings, then we should have a schedule for, maybe set up a schedule of calls or something with minutes, and that, have prescribed times where we document outcomes, and they then get passed on to the relevant people.
I thought this is this meeting.
So maybe that is this meeting, but if we're trying to do it in between meetings, we need to be perhaps a little more formal about how we do that.
Yeah, and it can't be. Because we can only take action when there's an immediate need,
Yes.
right? And that means, by definition, these are things that cannot wait until the next RSAB meeting, right?
No, the decision was taken. The decision was taken, right? The decision is.
So we decided to take a decision, right? Yes. And at that point, we took a decision, and we caused tools to change, and then we should have informed the RSWG around that same time.
Which is now, because it was 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago.
No, the 4 weeks is not timely. I don't. So
I think we're going around in circles.
Yeah, we do.
So let's pause for a moment. And my suggestion is we clearly have a decision process issue on our side. Let's think about it. In the meantime, if we have other decisions to make, let's make sure, at least in an ad hoc fashion, that they're spread widely as quickly as possible. And then let's sort a proposal for how we do our decision process. Yeah. That way, maybe we can move forward now.
I like Jay's proposal of basically having a formal decision point, and then we can tee off different actions of that.
Yeah, I think that is a good proposal, and we should figure out how to.
I would argue that we should probably describe what we would consider timely to be. And then if the RSWG disagrees with that, we can at least have a discussion. Yeah, so we're setting expectations.
That's awesome.
My suggestion was in an attempt to take away worrying about what timely is by saying that when we think we've made a decision, we write it up as a thing, and that it's a document, whatever, some kind of structure, and that is what is sent to the RPC, to the tools team if required, and to RSWG. So there is just a thing, and nothing happens until we've agreed that document. And once we've agreed it, it's published, everyone can have it.
That also works.
It seems like kind of a little bit of overhead for me, but we definitely should have more structure around this.
We might need that ballot support earlier than we thought, but that's just aside.
But do you really want to ballot on any kind of these kind of decisions?
Well, I mean, yes, right, because we need a document that we came to an agreement in some form, and that better have a record. And at the moment we're doing this by email, right, and that's fine too. But that's exactly like I think how we need to record that we made decisions on the RSAB.
I thought the way that we report is, or like the point of time is the meeting where we record things and then we take further actions from there. But anyway.
If we delay the action until the meeting.
No, we didn't delay the action.
We didn't, exactly. But if we can only say that the meeting is the time when we do these actions, if we actually wait until the meeting. But because we are only supposed to take actions when there's an immediate need, I don't see how we can delay things until the next meeting and still say we needed to take immediate action and then sat on it for 2 months. Because sort of.
Okay, let me actually take an action item to work on a proposal how this process should look like, and then we have the discussion on the mailing list.
I think everybody who's not on the RSAB quickly is reconsidering whether they want to attend future meetings because these discussions.
Because they're having so much fun.
At least you get lunch out of it and a painful discussion about how it.
Apparently, the lunch wasn't enough of a draw.
Great, first decision we take when we don't know the process. Okay, that was not unexpected. Okay, let's move on.
Okay, so the rest is just check-ins. It's wanting to see if any of the stream managers had any concerns or comments, feedback about how the inclusive language process is working or how the Auth48 archive is working?
So as I can tell, the Auth48 archive is working fine and is completely invisible to everyone, apart from people who go search it out. Inclusive language seems to be working fine. Every time traditional gets flagged up, someone asks a question about why that is. We may need to provide some more guidance for that. But other than that, yeah, it seems to be working fine from my point of view.
Okay, so maybe we haven't been doing a good job. I thought we were trying to frame it as a clarity issue.
No, it is a clarity.
It is a clarity issue, but everyone says, why traditional? People don't understand why this is a problem.
Okay, so we've been trying to point to the document. So it's flagged in the NIST document. And there's an explanation in the table. So maybe we just need to point to that more directly or make it more prominent about why.
I think in this case, some of the other cases, people understand intuitively why this is being flagged up. That's one that people don't seem to understand intuitively. So we may need to point to explicit chapter and verse, subsection 4.2 of the NIST document, because people don't seem to be able to find it.
Yeah, meta point again. So we talked about this with the ISG on Sunday, so we should maybe take it out of the ISG Sunday since we're going to talk about it here, which is the more appropriate forum. Similar to Colin, Auth48 works great. Area directors really rely on it already because it makes it easy to send a link to somebody to point them at a specific comment that was made during Auth48, which wasn't possible before. Inclusive language seems to work fine. The only thing we talked about this on Sunday, I'm just mentioning it here for those of you who weren't there. I think the language that you're using is fine in the sense that it's very clear to me at least that you're trying to suggest to authors that they review the use of those terms. But some authors seem to misunderstand it as, the RFC that told me to change this word, and how dare they, or I don't understand. I don't know if these things can be further clarified. I think it's a very small fraction of authors that is confused in this way, but it is a thing, right? So if there's better words that you could put in the first paragraph of this thing, but
let me make a suggestion. I think one point is like that people don't see it as like a request to review, but a request to change. But that's I think. But
it says it's a request.
Yeah, so that's your point, right? I think that's actually very clear in the wording. People just don't understand it.
Right.
But the other point is that not all of these words, and that's written in the NIST document, but nobody clicks on that and reads the NIST document, right? So not all of these words are like necessarily extremely like exclusive or whatever. But some of them are just like, because of cultural references, are not clear. And by increasing clarity here, you can be more inclusive, and you can maybe phrase it in that way, that like the purpose is also to increase clarity, because it might not. So like if you add one more sentence explaining that not all the words are the same, or that this is part of the purpose, that could help.
Okay, so we will review the language that we're using, but the language that we're using, we were trying to rely on the examples or the definitions that were provided in the NIST document, which is why we point to the table that that tells you why.
Yes, I totally understood, but this NIST document is like very broad, right? Like if you look at some maybe other documents, they specifically focus on the words which are somehow.
But that was not what the community wanted.
No, I'm not
document.
discussing this document. I'm just saying that there's like a set of words where people understand they are kind of exclusive because they have like a very specific wording in there. But the NIST document is much broader than that and has like a lot of words which are just like unclear because of cultural references. And that's something that I don't think is clear to people. So spelling that out, why this NIST document is so broad, like adding a sentence to it might help.
Okay, I guess I had taken it for granted that that was a given because the community adopted the NIST document.
Obviously not, yes.
So we need to be careful here, right? Because the community was very clear that they wanted to use the NIST document. And if we now start to interpret the NIST document in a paragraph in the email, we are down the path, just slightly, but we are down the path of giving our own guidance.
No, but I think the NIST document has wordings around that the NIST document is broad because it tries to increase clarity. Right. So if we can use that wording, instead of just like pointing to the NIST document, actually put it one more sentence in there, that might help.
But I mean, so I've liked these as part of my AD reviews, right? Or I try to, and I try to say the same thing. You know, it's an ask for review, and if somebody says I reviewed it and I think this usage is fine, I'm very happy to accept that, right? But I think it's very clear what you have. I don't know if it can be improved. If you can think of a way, that would be great. But I think we are already at the point where there's a very small fraction of authors that misunderstand what they're being asked to do, right? And so.
Okay, so like I said, we'll review and see if we can do
Maybe ask the individual which words would have been clearer, and we'll see if they will be generally more clear or just individually more clear. And
okay.
then you have another thing for the IAB there that.
I mean, also, I don't think trying to get to the stage where no one is confused about this is a realistic goal. There's always going to be a few.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't think we can try, but I don't think it's super important. Like if you take the text as it is, that's fine as well.
I just brought it up because, as usual, when terminology gets brought up, it caused a repeated discussion of the whole terminology thing, and yeah. But thanks for doing it.
Okay. The last one is actually something we can probably just talk to Miria about. And really, it was just there's some guidance that the IAB provided to us a while ago that outlined some details about how the different documents should be formatted. And some of the documents recently, there were some updates that were pretty time consuming. And so we were just wondering if there's a way that we can update.
Yeah, we definitely should. I just wasn't sure. So you said the IB was writing this document and providing it to you. It wasn't you writing the document and then agreeing with the IB. So your expectation is that the IB is updating the document, or do you want to propose updates to the document to the IB?
I think we have some proposals for you,
Okay.
and then we can figure out who actually.
Let's do that. I think the IB would be very happy about that.
Okay. That's all that we had on the agenda for today. So unless anyone has any other topics or questions for us.
I'll just mention it. Sorry?
This is any other business, and Elliot has another business.
Yeah, just not to try and solve the problem today, but for those who hadn't noticed, there was an erratum opened on it was an obsoleted IAB document that was, I think, whose document that did the obsolete was updated by RFC 9280. But it opened a bit of a question, which is if there are any IAB documents that touch on RFCs that weren't updated, there may be a need to, one of the things we didn't cover in 9280 was how to handle their erratum and their errata. So I don't have a specific suggestion. I'm not even sure if it's a real problem yet because this was such a peculiar errata itself that
this was an errata to an obsolete document?
Yeah, it was an errata.
Don't they get rejected because it's an obsolete document anyway?
Right, well, so be that as may, one thing we should just keep an eye out for is whether or not the RSWG has anything to do there in terms of providing a policy for updating errata of these sorts of things. I'm not sure there is yet, but it was things happened pretty quickly. Was it last week, 2 weeks ago? And I just want to make sure we don't, we have in fact informed people what we did and who did what.
So Elliot, I don't think it is formally obsolete. I think it's implicitly obsolete by the new model, possibly, but I don't think it's formally obsoleted because the new model didn't follow the path backwards of boilerplates to see what documents are updated by changes that it made.
Yeah, so this is the boilerplate document. Give me just a moment, I'll bring it up.
So just so I understand, the question is whether the IAB should handle this change or we should pass it to the RSWG or?
So this had to do with RFC 5741. And there was some text in there that said about how and when how boilerplate is meant to be used. And a correction was proposed. Now, if I go to the...
So that specific errata was deleted because it was a duplicate from an existing errata that was verified at some point, like that is hold for a document update, I think. So this errata is not our problem at the moment, but it's a more general question about erratas that are raised against IUB documents that define the RFC process. Because, and like, I think it's an even broader question about what, like, we also had this discussion about the XML format, like how much does the IAB need to agree to obsolete these documents, right? So what's the role for the IAB, if any, for these existing RFCs that are part of the IAB stream? That is the question I have.
Yeah. And we actually looked at that. That came up in the working group previously.
Yeah.
Right, and we chose to defer that question specifically. So this is something that the RSWG might want to put a little energy into at some point, just to see which documents the editorial need to be in the editorial series and under editorial stream control going forward. I don't have any specific suggestions as to which ones at this point. It's just there may be a little work hiding there.
I have a different suggestion, and that's maybe a bit more pragmatic in the sense that so there's a bunch of documents that are historically in the IAB, and they talked about previous RFC editor models that are not in effect anymore. And frankly, I don't care who approves the errata for those or not approves them because they don't change anything, right? Because if RFC editor model 2, you prove erratas all you want, it's not going to change how RFCs are produced.
No, but now, I mean, this is the documents about streams and boilerplates, right?
So I wasn't done yet. Right, so for documents on the IAB stream that still impact how RFCs get produced and how the RFC process works, right? I would expect the RPC where they get raised to bring them to the RSAB, because as far as I remember, and maybe I'm wrong here, but it's not the RSWG who's the stream improving body for the editorial stream, it's the RSAB, right? Because the stream improving body decides on the erratas.
Yeah, and currently they just come to the IAB, right? These erratas. And like the minimum for fulfilling this request, the minimum you have to do is like to name a set of RFCs where these erratas should go somewhere else.
Right, so the errata get raised with the RPC. If these are IAB stream documents that still affect how RFCs get produced and how the process works, the RSAB should be the approving.
Yeah, so
body, not the IAB, and the IAB needs to agree to that.
That's the question I have. Like, A, what's a set of documents, and B, do we need to like formally have an agreement from the IAB? I would propose we decide this on a case-by-case basis as errata get filed, because it's not happening very often, and I don't see the need to like do busy work now. As long as we agree that the IAB will basically delegate this going forward.
Yeah, I think I would suggest that the IAB simply just delegate it internally effectively, and you could choose to undelegate it at any time, but you just say, we'll just ask our SAB, and the RSAB will say it, and we'll sign off on it, and then you don't have to do any process stages.
Okay. Okay, so I will bring it back to the IAB and try to get this minuted somewhere.
So just one comment, the benefit of naming the set of RFCs is helpful because we could just note it, assign the approvers to be the RFC.
So we're gonna build a list of RFCs incrementally as erratas come in, and we realize this is one where it's on the IAB stream, it still has an effect. So it should be the RSAB, and so we add it to the list, and we need to figure out where we maintain this list. I'm just basically trying to not have us do the work of trying to compile this list now. I would rather do it like in response to errata coming in.
Okay.
Which probably means we'll never have a complete list, but that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds like a good approach to me. As I said, I will bring it back to the IAB and try to minute it in the IAB minutes. Is that something we need to inform the RSWG about?
I think it would be nice of us to send that there, not because I think they have any say here really, but I think it's sort of just,
But-
because it's a wrinkle in the process that we've now clarified, and I think it's worthwhile for the community to understand what the clarification is.
I mean, definitely, yes. So but like we will have it in our minutes now, right? Our minutes are public. Are we expecting people to just read our minutes, or are we actually reaching actively out to the RSWG for all these kind of things?
I would say email is cheap, and I mean, we can send our minutes to the list, right? So
That's the other- that's
rather
the
than
other
them
option.
having to like find them on the website or wherever they go. And you know, whether we send an extra email or we forward the minutes to them, I don't know. If we don't forward the minutes already, we probably should anyway.
Cindy, we probably don't forward the minutes, right?
We didn't for the first step, but I can do that going forward.
Do we want to do that? Okay, perfect.
The minutes are public.
Yeah, yeah.
It was approved by email, because the only other meeting you guys had was in July, so, I mean,
Trying to figure out what
presumably,
the process is, yeah.
you'll do the same thing this time. You'll approve them by email, and once it's approved and posted to the data tracker, I can just send an announcement to RSWG.
Let's do that. Okay.
Robert
perfect.
has signed up.
And it is an AOB, but I'll wait for the AOB to happen. I have an AOB item.
Okay, I think we're good on this one, right?
No, so I have one more question. There's this broader policy question about also kind of, does the IB have to agree if those documents gets obsoleted or updated or whatever? I think that is this question that should be raised with the RSWG, and I'm not sure if there's an issue on the RSWG already.
So I think it's a related question, and I think sort of morally, the IAB has sort of given away the control of the RFC editor, right? And so I think similar to how they would, they should delegate the errata approval to the RSAB for those other documents on the IAB stream. They should also delegate a decision on updates or obsolescence to the RSAB. Because so the principle, if you look at it another way, is like under the current model, these documents would have been published on the editorial stream, right? Because that's like where they would go going forward. And so we're trying to sort of like grandfather them in, sorry for using that term, somehow. And so the IB basically should.
I mean, yes, they should. I'm just asking about the process because, I mean, at the end, that's an even broader question. Like, how do we generally handle the process? Is like one stream updates or obsoletes document from another stream? Because that's also, it's not the only case here.
Jump in.
So
Can we retrospectively change the stream of these RFCs?
you might be able to, but I guess one thing I'd point out that errata have no actual force. So this is not so you're not changing the documents at all when you approve errata because they have no actual force. And of course, we could retroactively change the stream, but since there aren't very many of them, and it seems like the IB has free to approve or not approve errata as they please, in any fashion they please. And the process they use can be perfectly well to ask the RSAB what it thinks, and then take the RSAB's answer. And the reason to write a document would be if the IB wished to alienate itself from the right to take that back. But as long as it seems like the IB wished to give up the right to take around those documents, but I don't see a reason why you need to do that. And so I think it's the easiest to do as Laura suggests, which is just to formally the IB approves them, but informally ask the RSAB. And again, they have no force, so it's just pictorial.
But I mean, is the process you're proposing that like the IAB approves is in the loop for all of these documents? For each document separately, that doesn't make sense.
Only for the one. I'm only talking about the ones that IB formally approved, right? How many are there, and how many are? Maybe. How much time we spent discussing this versus how many are there?
And when it comes to the
People have submitted a lot of errata on the format track.
Well, I would suggest you ignore those because we're just going to force a new version.
Yeah, I was going to say, so for the updates and obsolescence, right? I think what we can actually do is we because you can't obsolete something from another stream, but the IAB can basically, at the point where the RSWG publishes a new document on the editorial stream that's intended to obsolete something, you can just mark that thing as historic. Right, so the IAB takes an action to mark their document as historic, and there's a new document now. And there's no obsolete relationship between the streams that way.
Yeah.
But it's still clear that this document is now.
So, but it's also not true that like a document from one stream cannot obsolete a document from another stream.
Isn't it? I thought so.
No, this happened like for DTN at least.
Okay.
Because we don't have any rules on that. So that's what I'm trying to say. I think we should have actually written a policy down and that should go
No,
like.
not
having a
every rules
policy-
this helps us here, so let's use that.
Okay, so you don't want to raise it with the RSWG as a policy issue. Then what is that?
I mean, we wrote a policy down for this for obsoletes between IETF stream and IETF stream, so we could
Yeah.
do something similar.
I don't remember that. But I think-
So my only question is, do you want to raise a policy question with the RSWG or do you not? That's my question.
The policy question on errata approval?
No,
No?
on obsoleting and updating between streams.
Anybody can raise anything with the RSWG. If somebody wants to do it, they can do it. From the RSAB perspective, all we have to say is what we've decided. That's it.
Okay, so we don't have to decide anything right now because there's no document to decide.
There's actually an RSWG topic here, but it's a harder one, and it relates to the legacy stream, which also sees erratas, and where we also have the case where sometimes IETF documents want to update and legacy documents, and we have at least some community members that are vehemently opposed of the IETF touching the legacy stream in any way because it predates us, and how dare we, right? So that's a discussion that the RSWG I think could have in that space. I don't think it's very urgent because we've been sitting on this problem for a long time, but it's very
But
related.
like my understanding is that the RSAB doesn't want to officially raise this issue because there's no urgency, but any individual in this room can raise this issue on their
Yes.
own capacity. Okay, perfect. Then we resolved this.
And Robert had another one.
Go for it. We have 2 more minutes.
When we went through the RSC editor Model V3 transition and the documents placed roles and responsibilities in different places, there was a dangle. There's at least one. I've been pointing to it. It hasn't become an important fix yet, but at some point it will. The IAB still is the body that is tasked with maintaining headers and boilerplate. I don't know if that's correct.
Maintaining what, sorry?
The headers and boilerplate.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
RFC 9280 updates that.
Yeah, and it's still on the IAB webpage where we discussed it earlier that it will be removed.
So let me go back, and there's a place in 9280 that intended to do this, but I don't believe that it actually did it. And it definitely didn't change the text that said that the IAB will maintain the website.
Yes, right.
Surely it didn't do that.
Yes,
Yeah.
we can raise an error for that. We should,
Thanks, Robert.
yes.
Any other business?
I will raise this as an error topic. Okay, that's it.
Can we talk about next meeting in 1 minute? Do we intend to do Yokohama and nothing before for RSAP unless something comes from the RSWG? Is that the plan?
That's the plan, and even if we don't have anything in Yokohama, we might not have one.
Okay.
But the intention is to have it in Yokohama. That would at least be my impression. Unless anything comes up.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I can see what now that I see how because it was saying how you use the character. That's the context where they use absolutely not. So, yeah, but I just thought it was hilarious when I saw it. When I looked at it, and again, the April 1st one, I'm strictly one, but then the other one was. And quite frankly, you know, that's not something that you parse that way. Right.